Welcome back to another episode of Take Back Mondays, the podcast to help you love Mondays, where I give entrepreneur tips and I interview cool people building cool businesses so that you don't have to hate Mondays ever again. I'm your host, Krista Molione, and today I'm really excited to have Jacob Suckow on the podcast. Welcome, Jacob.
Hey, Krista, thank you so much for having me, and thanks everybody for listening. I'm excited.
Wonderful. Well, today we're going to talk about something that I think is really underrated that people don't get excited about as much as they should, which is email. So I'm super happy to have you because you're the owner of the Email Empire, which I love the name, very clear. And you're going to tell us a little bit about why email is so cool, right?
100%.
But before we dive into that, tell us a little bit about your background. So you have been doing this for the past 5 years. Why did you end up in email of all places, right? Like when you grew up, you're like, I want to work with email. That's where I want to work.
No, I've never known what I wanted to do, and my journey is all over the place. So I like to tell people that if there's a rocky start that could happen to anything, like I picked boulders. I thought I wanted to go into medicine originally, right? I thought I wanted to go into exercise physiology. That's what I went to school for. Figured I wanted to own a business of some sort and landed on chiropractic, can open up some clinics there. Found a great doc, had an internship lined up with the Seahawks, got into one of the best schools in the country, did it for 8 months and showed up one day, was working at the patient desk. It's like, I hate this. There's no chance I can do this for the rest of my life and go spend, the $300,000 for it. And serendipity is good. And at the same point in time, I had a close friend that I'd known while I was going to college who reached out and he said, hey, you're not going to school anymore, are you? I was like, yeah, no, we talked yesterday. No, I'm not. Like, what do you mean? And he followed up. He's like, well, listen, you've been helping on and off with this thing we've been working on. I'd love to have you come and run sales. And that was for an edible cookie dough company. Sounds super strange. In 2013 at the time, it was like a really hot food trend that was coming up here in the States. And the goal was to build an all natural, relatively clean version of it that we could sell in stores and on e-commerce. And I didn't have anything else to say yes to. So heading up sales and marketing for a cookie dough company was great, hell of a lot better than nothing. And that was a ton of fun. In 2.5 years, we went from doing like 25K in farmers markets to a couple million a year, national distribution, e-commerce. And that's where all the email marketing came in, right? It was like first foray into anything there, anything direct response. I always say I wish it was anything but food because we would have actually made money on the business as a whole, but amazing lessons. And when my daughter was born in 2018, traveling for the business was just a little bit too much, 3 to 4 times a month with new customers on the East and West Coast. And so I took a step back. We moved back where I grew up at home and took on a job working with an HR SaaS company. And so for 10 years, they've been very successfully selling to startups and SMBs in the recruitment marketing space, basically helping them attract top tier talent with cool content, SEO marketing, whatever. Not super important, but a ton of fun. And they had the idea that, hey, all these sexy startups are great and they need talent, but there's a lot of really big, boring guys over here who have a lot of money who need this exact same thing. And because I'm good at nondescript job descriptions, I guess, they said, we need somebody to come in, help us build out the messaging, take it into market and be the guinea pig, and implied, but pretty explicitly, if you don't fail, then help us build out a team and we'll keep you on the job. And luckily, again, we didn't fail. We brought on, Boeing and the MLB and Disney Plus and had some really fun big deals come through there, built out a team of 5 or 6, all going really well until COVID hits. And all the people that we were selling to who were hiring by the hundreds are laying off by the thousands. And I'd been doing some consulting at the time for other B2B SaaS companies, helping them build out their outbound teams, working on some top of funnel stuff for marketing and email and where that all plays into that. And I decided, well, I might as well just do more of this until I can leave and go on my way. That was about 2.5 years ago. At this point in time, when I went full time, started off working with B2B SaaS companies, realized for the same reason I didn't like working at one and like working with them so much. Moved on into, some e-commerce brands, coaching, consulting, and where I really landed, my stronghold is with solopreneurs, folks like me who were coming up with some sort of a passion and energy around a skill that they had. That they either wanted to teach, sell as a service, write courses, info products, things like that. Those are my people. they're scrappy, they're high energy, they're really willing. And what they want to do is build an audience around a piece of content or an idea that's really important to them. And so now what I'm doing is running coaching programs. I've got a membership, I've got some courses, and a lot of fun stuff coming up in the next new year, all under Email Empire. And that's how we land where I'm at today.
Wow. Well, you're right with my people, and these are the people who listen to this podcast. So, I think that communication is the missing piece, because if you've got somebody who has the skill set to deliver the service and they feel comfortable and confident enough to start a business around it, so they better be good at proving it and delivering, but they have really struggles with trying to communicate what they do. And like one of the typical mistakes I see, and I want to hear yours as well, what you've seen, is to right away go into the features list, like all the nuts and bolts of like, here's what you're going to get, and it's going to be in this format, and it's going to be this long. And I'm like, have you ever gotten excited to buy something when you looked under the hood? Unless you're a total nutcase geek, 99% of people buy because of emotion. And then they validate their purchase with logic, right? But it's so hard because when you're the expert in that area, you are the geek. So you get into that physician mode. Like as a doctor, you can't put yourself in the customer's shoes because you're just so passionate about this topic, which the customer isn't. They're just like, I just need what the thing does for me, not not that. Do you see that as well in your line of
all
work?
the time. So there's a David Foster Wallace talk that's really famous, and it's called Water. And it's all about how fish, right? They go on existing their entire lives, talking about everything around them, everything that they see. And one of them brings up water and they stop. And the whole talk is just about how they don't realize what they're surrounded by just because that's the environment that they're in. And content's the same way, explaining expertise is the same way. And so there's like a two-step stage that I usually talk about this, and that helps to clear it up for a lot of folks. Everyone tells you need to build authority when you're starting off, right? Like if there's one thing you hear in marketing that's repeated to no end, that's it. And we think that authority is collecting this list of testimonials in this big group worth of thing and showing up on 40 podcasts. And in reality, it has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with the way that the people who are going to buy from you think of you and when they do. And so I've got a saying that I've loved that helps to clear it up, and that's authority is simply expertise meeting an audience, right? And so we've got expertise, right? Like anybody who's going off to do something, who's listening to this show, you're an expert in some fashion, no matter what that may be, and you can teach other people who've got a gap towards that skill. So your goal is to connect that expertise with an audience. How do I go out and find the people that are going to need to learn this skill? And if you were to think about it, the last way that you would attract those folks is to start listing off how you build a computer. You would start and say, hey, listen, are you interested in computers? Do you want to know how they work? Well, here, let me actually go and show you a small part of that. And now they want to learn more. And now you give them an opportunity to show up somewhere to learn more, whether that's your email list, whether it's socials or a blog, it doesn't matter. But the whole point is that you break it down into stages, right? And so if you want people to associate you with a topic, usually the most powerful and the first thing that you can do is make some sort of a paradigm shift in the way that they think about a situation. And for me, that's teaching them that, hey, listen, email marketing isn't this big, scary thing. And you can do a lot with a really small list as long as it's engaged. So first and foremost, I change the way that they think about something or help them realize that I can do this, empower them, right? And so that's the why, right? That's kind of like why and what's going on there. The next stage, and this is where usually like more granular content comes out on a consistent basis, is what, right? It's what do you need to do in order to be able to make the connection from where you are today to where I've shown you want to go. That's the kind of things that you can put in social posts, right? These are great for top of funnel reach. Now, the one thing, and this is along with what you mentioned, is everybody gets really stuck on how. They think that the valuable content is in how. And if somebody is not ready to actually apply that, if they're not immediately in the situation of execution, how is useless. And it's only going to make them feel more inadequate and overwhelmed with everything that they have to do. And so everyone that I teach and what we talk about is, no, we pulled the how back all the way until someone says, I'm ready, I'm invested, here's the program, the course, whatever. That's where how belongs. Showing them what it looks like in play, that's where the investment happens. And that's how you can help somebody make the biggest amount of change, is to give them the steps that they need to accomplish a goal at the right time. Does
I'm
that make
so
sense?
happy you're talking about timing, because what I see is most of my clients, they're trying to get their marketing up to par on their own. And so they come to me and they're so proud of themselves. They're like, I have written my email sequence. And I'm like, okay, show it to me and like what's happening. And it's really like talking over your head. It's just
Mm-hmm.
these very long, and it's all smushed together in like, it's like just this monologue that's probably like a page worth of copy, even
Yeah.
more. And there's no line breaks, there's no lists. And it's just this monologue. And when I asked her, well, why would you do this? The main thing is, well, I thought I was supposed to show off my expertise, like give value. So I think there's
Mm-hmm.
this misconception about, how to get a client. It's like show value. But in the end, what you just said is, maybe I'm not even ready for that yet. Like, have you, and that goes back into permission marketing. Like, do
Mm-hmm.
I have maybe you gave me your permission to add me to your list because I downloaded a lead magnet from your website or something, right? But did I ever give you permission to start lecturing me about
Yeah.
everything? Um, so that's been a big problem for clients, because they seem to have this common understanding that that's what they're supposed to do.
Yeah. The one thing that I can make recommendation for anyone who's in that situation, or as you approach these folks, is that we tend to jump the gun, right? Like we view the customer journey as this like 3-step thing. It's opt-in, right? It's nurture, and then it's purchase. And it's like, geez, guys, this is like 2 to 3 years long for some people. There's not only 3 points on this damn journey, and it looks a hell of a lot more like a roller coaster or a circle than it does a straight line. And so one of the things that you can try and think about after someone opts in is they've simply told you one thing, and that's, I want to learn more about this topic in general. That's the only thing you know. You don't know anything beyond that. You don't know if they are in the right place, the right environment, have the right budget, have the right things in place to even succeed from the information that you want to share. So everything that you do that shares those things actually detracts them. It makes it harder for them to reach the goal. The first thing that you want to do when somebody jumps onto your email list, and I've got to come up with a better word for this because it always sounds so culty, but it's to indoctrinate. Right? They have told you that they agree with whatever your big, loud, obnoxious belief is that you're sharing all over the internet. Right? They agree with you. They say, this makes sense. And honestly, I think, Jacob, you might be the one to be able to show me how to do this. So my goal is the second that you hit my list, I want to show you anything and everything that is possible with email and break down all the awful beliefs that you've been built up over the years that are not your fault, but that have been in place from bad marketing, bad advice, or quite frankly, just from times changing. So the biggest favor that I can give you, the biggest value that I can deliver when you hop onto my list is reassure you that you are in the right place. And here's what you can look forward to if you continue to follow along and execute on the stuff that I'm going to share with you in the future.
I love that. I guess the term I've been familiarized with is like your onboarding sequence or your welcome sequence. And I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of entrepreneurs just skip that completely. They go right into that soapbox monologue,
Yeah.
lengthy thing. Another thing that's a problem is coming up with good titles. Do you have any advice for how to come up with better? Because obviously that drives like 50% of the open rate, at
Mm-hmm.
least, right? Is like the title of the email. Um, is this going to be interesting for me to read or not?
Sure.
Um, what would be your advice in terms of an entrepreneur trying to figure that out?
Yeah. So the way that I think about writing an email, and we'll specifically tie it back to the welcome sequence here, and I'll share a little bit more about that in a second, is to think of an email as one cohesive thing that has 3 or 4 separate parts, right? So every email that you send, it's going to have a goal. And it's really important before you write anything to outline what that goal is. Is it to drive a click over to another piece of content? Is it to get someone to reply? Is it to drive them over to a sales page that they might want to check out? Is it to get them to actually opt into someone else's list and for me to demonstrate a little bit of clout and clarity for someone else? Those are 4 examples. But each of those emails is going to have a very different style in the way that it's written, depending on the goal, and should also have a different subject line depending. So let's say it's to drive to another piece of content, because this is a very common one for most people. So the goal is to get them to go to a page, to read a piece of content, to have an experience, and to learn something, right? And the best way that you can get someone to initiate that experience with a subject line is intrigue on what it is that's going to happen, right? Always. Some folks like shock and awe, some folks like alliteration, but quite frankly, when it comes to your welcome sequence, especially the first email, you benefit from straight up curiosity that it's the first email they receive from you, so they're likely going to open it. It's why they have like 70 to 80% open rates most of the time. But the big bulk of work actually happens after they open the subject line. So it's the same way when you talk about writing copy. The purpose of the subject line is to get the email opened, right? The purpose of the preview is to get them to read the next line, next line, next line, next line. And the more copy that you have, the more qualified of a reader you're going to have on the next page, but the more people you're going to turn off. So if the sole goal, I just wrote an email like this yesterday and I absolutely killed it and it was a lot of fun. If the sole goal is to get somebody to drive to another piece of content, what you should do is really drum up some curiosity and mystery around that one piece. Talk about what they can find at this link and leave it hanging, right? There should be a cliffhanger on just about any content-driven piece of email, because you're not trying to deliver any result in the email. The email sells the click. The click carries them to the content. The content delivers whatever it is that sits on side of there, right? And so I hope that example is helpful for everyone listening, because I know it's one of the most common ways that we use email.
No, it is. It is. And, I think email is one of the trickier bits, to be honest. Because you're just dancing. You're this fine dance of keeping people engaged,
Mm-hmm.
trying to please everyone, like you said, because they may have opted in different ways. The way I was taught is segmentation. So I don't know if I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
it right, but I asked one qualifying question only. And that question is, where are you at in your business journey? And I have 4
Mm-hmm.
tags, which is not started, not interested in starting a business. Like that's not my thing.
Yeah.
Just starting out, gathering information, already have a business, but need a lot of help,
Mm-hmm.
and doing quite well, but trying to scale to the next level.
Yeah.
And that really helps me understand, like, this people would not at all be interested in these kind of sequences I'm going to put out. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I've been told by some email people that could be that could decrease the signups, because they say the more information you ask up front from a person, so they said, first name and email address only.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any opinion, or you think it's because
Oh,
I
I've
want
got
the
lots of
data?
opinions.
I'm a nerd.
Yeah.
I want the data. I want to tag
Yeah.
them. So that's why I make that part of my sequence always, my landing
Yeah.
page.
So the folks who told you that are correct, right? The more information that you ask for, the more friction, the less conversion rate, right? However, that stems from the idea that you want as many people as possible on your email list. And this is one of the biggest things that I speak out against. So for the past 10 years, and this is you can be successful doing it this way, we've taught that the best way to build and grow an email list that you can sell to is to drive ads or drive traffic, typically from ads, to some sort of a lead magnet. That's an incentive to get someone to opt in, and then to hit them with a welcome sequence and then sell them right away or bounce them off your list, right? You can do that. It's very expensive, especially today in comparison to like 10 years ago when this whole idea came out. And it's also very time consuming, god awful boring, and it's an awful experience for the people on the other end. We've all been a part of email campaigns where you sign up for a lead magnet to check it out, and you almost grit your teeth when you hit the button for submit because you know what's coming on the back end of it. It's right, I'm going to get dropped into a funnel. So I would challenge, and I would say that the more information you can collect with your subscribers on the front end is actually a better opportunity for you to engage more with them. And I say this for 2 reasons. One, because a big list doesn't mean big sales. So I have a great example. I had 2 clients at the exact same time, very similar niche, very similar style of campaign, and almost identical price point. One had a list of 20,000, one had a list of 5,000. We ran the campaign over the week. And you know, it was wild, blew my mind. The end of that week, the 5,000 person list had sold almost double. What was different These people emailed 3 to 4 times a week in comparison to the 1 to 2 times a week the 20,000 person list sent. They had much higher replies because that was a part of their strategy along the way. And quite frankly, they did a better job of pre-prepping their list leading into it, just with the way that they communicated and the opinion that they had of them. So the thing that matters tenfold more than the size of your list is the relationship you have with each subscriber and how concentrated that list is, right? Because it doesn't matter if there's 100,000 people on that list if only 1,000 of them are going to be customers. At that point, I'd argue you only have 1,000 people, right, worth talking to. And so if you can find a way to learn more about them on the front end, you can deliver better content and a better experience, and you're creating a much longer lasting relationship. Another way to do that, if you don't want to do it on the form portion on the front end, is to collect replies or clicks in the first email. And it's actually one of the biggest things I teach, especially if you're not sure. So in your case, Krista, I'm guarantee that you know that these 4 categories are a really big signifier for what's going to be helpful for these folks. A lot of people don't know that yet. They don't know, how do I split these folks out? The fastest way for you to be able to do that is to talk to your customers and collect data and see what kind of trends show up. You know what we don't think of when we talk about email is that it's a two-way communication channel, right? You send these things out, but hey, listen, people will send back. And if you ask for, and this is what I do in my email sequence, if you go there and check it out at the end of this episode, you'll see an example, but ask a question. Tell them, hey, listen, I'm so glad that you're here. Listen, on this list, my goal is to teach you how to grow and monetize your email list. Sound fair? Now, the best way for me to be able to create new products and content that's actually valuable for you is for me to learn more about you. If you send a quick 1-line reply with where you're at today and what your biggest struggle with email is, I promise that within 48 hours, I'll get a response back to you. You know what's crazy? I could take 100% click rate all day. But the fact that 1 out of every 5 to 10 people who gets my sequence says that, I now have hundreds and hundreds of responses that I can use to be able to understand everything about my customers and their value, right? And their life and where they're at. And that's the most valuable, like I can't put a price on that. People pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for customer research to tell them the same thing when you can just ask a question.
You're giving away so much. I want to thank you for being so generous with your knowledge. It's funny how I just think I tell my customers sometimes, if you would just carve out and make it a regular practice to listen to podcasts and actually read books, which I think people don't know how to actually read a book. I'm not joking. I have a whole theory about this. You could learn more than some of the courses that you pay for. Because what you just said, there's about 10 things you've said since we started that if I were listening right now, I would be taking notes like crazy. And I probably will when I come back out of this, because I want to take some quotes from you and make sure people are listening to what you said. But getting responses from people, that never even comes in their mind. They think that what their job is to shove something down their throats, right? And then they also think the list should be bigger. It's like, that's the whole goal, isn't it? Just keep rolling and keep tricking people, like trick them to get onto the list. And that's just so wrong. And like you said, you pay the price. One thing that I've been asked is not only about growing the list, but once you've got a bunch of subscribers and you've got, do you believe in newsletters? Or because there's kind of a mixed feeling out there, like, oh, newsletters, who reads those? Why are you asking me to do a newsletter? I thought I will do an email sequence, but no newsletter. And I actually have a newsletter on Saturdays that I send out to my list. And it's just basically like an overview of what's happening during the week. So all my podcast, so I'll release 1 podcast per week. I'll put that in there. I do 2 live streams per week that I have stopped uploading to YouTube. I download them, edit them, or I just do them live and that's it. And then sometimes I promote other people's stuff. So, I'll help someone with their launch and I'll be like, hey, this is you'll get a bonus from me if you sign up for his course, or here's a discount for you, courtesy of my friend, so-and-so, right? So it's kind of a smorgasbord of whatever I'm feeling like, but there is a format.
Yeah.
And people kind of just know, and I get a really high open rate on my newsletter. So I tell this to customers and they're like, no, some marketer told me that I'm not supposed to do newsletters. They're dead. I don't know. I can only answer from what my experience is with my newsletter. What do you think?
Yeah, for sure. So my take on this, and you guys will probably be blown away and surprised by it, but the only time that anyone on my list gets an automation is after they've taken a behavior. Every single email that I send, and I email almost daily, is written day of or earlier on that week. So they're all manual sends. And then there's one that goes out every week that's a newsletter, similar to the format that you mentioned, Krista, where it's a curation, right? That's valuable for two reasons. Yes, you can demonstrate expertise and authority by showing off, sharing all your content and only your stuff, but then you become a talking head. And the last thing that people want is to be talked down to, right? Nobody enjoys that. And also, you don't know everything. It's an awful picture to paint for yourself and your brand. Why not make connection to be able to drive other folks' audiences in, share their stuff, right? There's so much valuable things to learn. You don't ever want to be this one all-encompassing person just for this niche. It's no, you want them to understand what your expertise is and then draw parallel value from everywhere else across the board. Because if you also become a source for other good information, for curation, for where they can discover new things, it just further cements the behavior why it's so valuable to check your stuff out. And it's also an amazing way to leverage. So people in real estate, they have this acronym that they love, and it's called OPM. And it's about buying things with other people's money, right? When it comes to growing your audience organically, it's OPA. It's other people's audiences. How do I find people in a parallel niche to my own that we can collaborate with, where I can promote their content and they can promote mine? Because it's the easiest way, the most organic and native way for me to be able to be found in a different audience. And you can find these people everywhere. If you're active on LinkedIn, if you're active on any kind of social, I implore you to reach out to someone and say, hey, I created this thing and I've been checking your content out and I love it. I don't know if it's the case, but I think your audience might like this thing that I've got. Can we maybe talk about it and we can share some stuff, because I love this thing that you have and I'm going to share it with my audience. No chance that somebody says no to that 10 times out of 10. And it's a way to take whatever the size of your list is, which isn't that important, and magnify it exponentially with other folks. We all love to collaborate, right? Rising tide raises all boats, whatever the saying is that goes behind there. And so the other thing that's dangerous is thinking about your email list as being this isolated thing, right? An inbox is simply somewhere that 99, literally 99% of all people who have an email go to check every single day. And so the more value and conversations and community vibe that you can create inside of that, the more valuable it is for your subscribers, because it feels more natural to them.
You know, I study people's emails because I love email. And I actually have created rules in my inbox. So if we're going to geek out here, I'll admit
Yeah.
that I have like color coded labels. I have automatic rules. So if someone has proven themselves worthy, I would say, of like, wow, their content is really good, I create an inbox for them. And then once in a while, I'll go in and I'll read the emails because, like everyone, I get really busy. And
Mm-hmm.
my day is probably Sundays. And that's another thing I wanted to say is some marketers are saying, well, you shouldn't email your list on the weekends. Like, and I'm like, are you kidding me? That's when I catch up on all my stuff. Like, please inbox me on the weekend. My email comes on Saturdays. And you know, it's crazy how different styles people have. And I love that because I hate when everyone's copying. Some
Mm-hmm.
people who I follow, it's almost like an intimate diary. Like they're telling you what's going on in their emotions, how they're getting overwhelmed with being an entrepreneur. And recently they had like a total burnout and they just disconnected and they had to like get help or something, like go offline for a while. And, you know, and that creates this like human curiosity and empathy,
Mm-hmm.
and it makes them more likable because I'm like, it's really someone writing this. This isn't like you said earlier, this, you wrote those emails and you can tell the difference. That
Mm-hmm.
brings me to an interesting thing about styles. What do you think about AI technology? Because more and more of my clients are like, why should I even do this? I can just, you know, go to copy AI or one of those
Mm-hmm.
technologies and just have them write all my emails or all my blog posts and do it, you know, for the whole month. Um,
Yeah.
but I personally, I'm like, I can tell the difference. So I think they're getting good. They're definitely getting
Mm-hmm.
good, but it seems to me like we're not there yet. What do you think?
Yeah, they're tools and they're shortcuts. The thing to think about, at least with most of the folks, it seems like that are inside of your audience, what are they building? They're building a personal brand. There's a word inside of there out of the two of them that's really damn important, right? And it's personal. And no matter how fast and easy any tool makes it, it doesn't replace the fact that the people who are going to buy from you, they're going to be connected with you. You know, they're not just a demographic, and nobody buys on demographics. One of the biggest things that we should all pay attention to more is psychographics. It's like, what does my audience think on this? Like, what kind of things do they start to stand on in hot button opinions? Like, what kind of energy do they have? Are they high energy? Are they low? Are they introverted? Do they like a softer approach to things? Do they like a more direct cut to the, chase approach? And the only way that you get to find these things out is by talking to your audience and experimenting with it. The beautiful thing about emails, it's an immediate feedback mechanism, right? You can see opens, clicks, replies, everything that happens inside of it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you find things that your audience starts to really identify with more and more and more, you get to see that. And it becomes this almost natural correcting mechanism for you and your brand and the way you display your copy, right? Because you're getting numbers on every single one that goes out.
Oh yeah, I geek out on that. I still love looking at the stats. And then analyzing like what got higher open rates and trying to figure out why. What do you think about like actually there's this guy in my email inbox, he swears all the time and he's like really in your face and like I'm like, whoa, when I open my email, like, oh no. But look, I haven't unsubscribed, so that must mean something. I'm kind of taken back. What I was going to ask you though is, what do you think about people who are on your email list for a long, long, long time and they open, so they're not dead weight, but they never take action? And you're like, I think as the owner of the email, it gets kind of like frustrating because you're like, they never ever opt in for one of my offers. What's going on with them? A few times I've actually tried to reach out to these people. I'm like, this is one of those types. And so I was like, oh, I'll just like send them an email, a connection request on LinkedIn and just say, hey, we're both entrepreneurs. How are you? Nope, they don't want to talk to me, but they open all my emails. And I'm like, and they're not competitors, they're potential customer. Have you ever had anyone complain about that? Like your customers, like, why aren't these people buying my stuff?
Sure. It's always a contention point, right? And it goes, my background, like I came up in the world of sales originally. I'm a salesperson turned marketer, right? Which is an interesting direction to come from. And there's one thing that you could never control in it, and that's timing. And the second you try and force timing, you lose deals, right? Everyone knows it's expiring now, and it doesn't matter. If it's not the right time for you, then you're not going to purchase. I would caution anyone who gets too worried when you see that someone has, been reading for so long, for two reasons. One, it's a person, right? And all people decide things differently. They're in different situations. They're in different stages of whatever journey it is. They might have simply just joined a hell of a lot earlier than most people who hop onto your list. But the reason that I would caution it is because I've had people sit on my list for a year and a half and then buy everything that I have in a weekend, right? Could be timing on a budget. Could be that they've finally gotten over themselves and their own fear and misconceptions and are ready to actually take action. You never know. But you can know that going into it and curate certain styles of messaging for those folks. And it's exactly what you mentioned, right? So maybe every 6 months, if you see someone who's never purchased or never opted into an event or anything like that, and you reach out and say, hey, you've been here for a while and I love having you. I'm just super curious. Like, is there something in specific that you feel like is missing, that I can really help out with? Shoot me a reply. Let me know and check on them. Because sometimes they just may have one question or one objection that you have not purposefully just haven't answered for them yet. That's sitting there. It's an opportunity.
I really love that because, well, I just want to share that more for the audience, to be honest, because I think we've all felt that way. We've all been a little frustrated when we're like, that person, they always open, but they haven't bought. And this offer was particularly juicy. Why didn't they go for it? And what you just said just reassures me. And I want the audience to really know that is that everyone is on their own timeline and we don't know what's going on. I always tell people it's not about me, it's about them. Like if you show up and you're doing your best to understand what their needs are, and you're like, okay, for an early stage solopreneur, I know they need this. and then
Mhm.
these people don't buy, then it's not your problem. If you aren't communicating with them and you're guessing or you're assuming, that's even worse, assuming that they want this or they need this. That's why, like, my mission now is to start in 2023 a focusing my channel on ask me questions,
Mhm.
because what I really loved was the show that Gary Vee used to do called Ask Gary,
Mhm.
Ask Gary Vee or something. And he had all those videos, and I loved that show. But it's for us marketers so juicy because I'm like, you're having dialogues with your audience, and that's just priceless, right? So having those conversations. And I personally just bought a YouTube package that's in the 5 figures. It's a coaching package. And I have been on that guy's list for like 3 years. So I'm one of those people. And
Mhm.
every year I'm doing a challenge starting next week, business challenge. And most marketers, we do that like once, twice a year we launch or something. We have these big launches, and then we have mini launches, and then we have an affiliate launches. We help others. And year after year, you kind of get to know your favorite marketers. You're like, he's going
Mhm.
to do his famous, big launch right now. Are you like with me? And you're like,
Oh
oh,
yeah, 100%.
how many of them have you actually done more than once, but not bought, even though you actually like it, but it's just the money, because you've got to line up your priorities, right? And so I'm like, it's on my list and it keeps going up my list. And I'm like, I'm going to eventually buy it,
Yeah.
right? Anything that's just over a certain price point, because otherwise we have time and money limitations, right? So it's like, even though I love your stuff, like right now my head is like all focus. I can't focus on learning two things at once. I got, like, we talked about this before we recorded, right? Like social media platforms. Like if I want to become an expert in, I'm a solopreneur and I want to become an expert in Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Twitter all at once.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, that's going to be impossible.
Mhm.
So that's how I like to think when someone doesn't buy from me, that if they're still opening the email, they still are interested. So I'm going to disassociate my own insecurities or my own pride from
Mhm.
that number,
Yeah.
and also not get too hung up. What you said about, we can have all those stats, right? So we can see them, but we have to somehow mentally be okay with, like, okay, this one didn't have as good of numbers as the other one, and just accept that that's how it works, not to freak
Totally.
out, right? uh
Yeah, I think, that entire mental state, and this is like, I won't go too deep into it because we could talk on that for hours and it's its own separate topic, but is caused by the launch model that so many people have been taught to follow. So if you only do 2 to 3 launches a year, you assume that those 2 to 3 times, maybe even 1 or 2 times, are going to be right for everybody in your audience. And then if they don't buy, it's on you,
hmm
right? And so we create that feedback loop. When in reality, that's only one way to launch things. Quite frankly, it's one of the reasons why I teach either regular enrollments or my favorite, evergreen stuff. If you're emailing more often, if you're driving more traffic to your offers more often, and you see sales come in every day or 3 to 4 or 5 days a week, it's a hell of a lot easier to be calm about what your numbers look like because you now have regularity baked into your cash flow, your revenue, and it's something that's forecastable. You know that, hey, listen, if I give more people more opportunities to be able to show up at their own time, at their pace, then there's no way this doesn't work out. Then my goal is just
oh,
to continue attracting the right people, put the right messaging and opportunities in front of them, and let them come in at their own pace to some extent.
I know that that is a very kind of controversial topic, because some coaches are like, evergreen is a terrible
Mm-hmm.
decision. As soon as you do a open cart, closed cart, you're going to double your income. And I would say, I think it works if you have either a really strong small niche who like
Yeah.
adores that thing and they can't really get it anywhere else, or you have a very large audience and you've got that huge funnel coming in, then you're going to nail it
Mm-hmm.
anyways. But what you said is super important, because I've seen some of my best sales, first of all, the very last day when I have an offer.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm expecting 60% of the purchases sometimes to come on that very last day. It's super frustrating. You're like,
Mm-hmm.
I did a pre-launch. I did the whole, I had bonuses, they expired,
Yeah.
only a few people, the early action take it. Then you get to the very last minute and suddenly these people come out of nowhere. But the best sales are the people after the sale who message me and like, oh, I'm just catching up on my emails. The link isn't working anymore. Is that like, is it closed? Did I miss the sale?
Hmm.
So I think it's good to have almost like a post-launch, um, offer for people
Hmm.
who couldn't buy. Especially, I like to do it for something a little bit less expensive because
Hmm.
I'm like, okay, we're embarrassed when we can't afford something. We're like, I couldn't
Yeah.
afford that. It was just way out of my price range right now. And so then you offer them something that's a little bit more affordable, like a watered down version of that product. You're like, okay,
Hmm.
you weren't ready to go into the 3-month boot camp. So I have a 30-day program. It's a lot more affordable. And then you can upsell them later into the other program with a payment plan eventually if they need it.
Sure.
But by then you'll know. Whereas email, we're not getting direct feedback. Some coaches have taught to send out a follow-up email asking people why they didn't buy. Like,
Hmm.
I noticed you didn't buy the product. Here's like 4 reasons. Click on the right reason. I've tried it and I got such a negative reaction that I was like, okay, people do not like that email. I'm not doing that again.
No. Well, the whole reason is that so both of those models work. Like I want to make that clarification, right?
Mm.
Big time seasonal launches work, evergreen work. They take different strategies. And so my ask is always, what do you prefer? Would you rather do a massive amount of work 2 to 3 times a year to the point to where it's near overwhelm and you're running at sprint and full capacity for 2.5 to 3 weeks, but you bring in the largest chunk of your revenue? Then sweet, you can do that. If you're not that kind of person and you don't have a desire to do that and you'd much rather put in the compounding work day over day over day in an evergreen system, awesome. You can do that too. You just follow different systems. And I'd gladly point anybody in either direction towards whatever makes the most sense there. But in what you mentioned on the follow-up email, so again, that's an assumption of you didn't buy for some reason. I did everything right and you didn't buy. Why did you do that? Right? What the hell? Would you ever follow someone around the grocery store, watch them pick something up, put it down, and run up behind them and go, "Why didn't you buy that?
Yeah,
Put it back in your cart." It's
it's even
savage.
worse. It's even worse. Like, that was kind of the polite version. I've actually received at least 2 occasions email that
Hmm.
was actually blaming me, like, "You're a loser."
Totally.
Like
Yeah.
like, one, the title of the email was something along the lines of, "Well, obviously, you're not ready to take action in your life." Something, like, really
Yeah.
demeaning, and I'm like, "Great." So of course I'm gonna unsubscribe because even if I'd liked them up until that point, I'm like, "Look, you have an ego problem because you have no idea why I didn't buy," right?
Yeah. And that's further facilitated by that launch model. They've got to hit a number to make that launch profitable in that time period, right? And so if you notice that just doesn't work for you or your audience, it doesn't need to be that way. And the other thing to think about too is that whole premise assumes that one purchase is the goal for a customer for you. And that is not the case. If you spend
Lifetime
all of your
value.
time,
Mhm.
exactly, front end means nothing. It's simply a show of commitment, timing, and interest for that singular person. Everything is about the back end, right? So if you're growing a business like the ones we're talking about, personal brand focused, info marketing, courses, coaching, etc., the goal for you should be to be able to continue to curate a list of buyers who you can solve more and more and more problems for, right? Every time you create one product and they purchase an offer, that's great. You're going to help them with one problem and you're going to create 5 to 10 more. So then your next project as you grow as a business is to identify those problems, create new offers that solve those problems, and continue to stack. This is how you take one person from just starting to 5 years into journey with whatever it is that you can help them with. And they have now bought from you at every single stage because you've learned from them what they need. You've been
What they
in
need
tune.
next, what they need next.
Exactly.
That's why I
And they'll
like their
reward you for it.
memberships too, because, like, that's what you did with the email, like, starting conversations. That's so gold because I think it's hard, and I think not many people are doing that. But I think that if you can lure them into a membership, then you have direct contact with a large group of people and an
Sure.
ever-growing group of people where they're actually telling you week by week, month by month, they're actually telling you their fears and their problems.
Yeah.
So I think you can turn those into emails that that lead into a product. And that's, I think, the hard part for a lot of people is the whole email sequences um, is what Jeff Walker calls the sideways sales letter, where you're like
Yeah.
putting out emails that are like dripping value, but then kind of very, very discreetly going into a sales,
Mhm.
offer. It's an art of work, a work of art. And I'm wondering, is this a service you teach? Is this something you're teaching? So tell us a little bit about what you do now at Email Empire, because we've talked about all these things. I'm sure everyone's nodding their head like, oh my God, so true. How do you help people solve all their email woes?
Yeah. So there's different levels of access because my goal is to make email approachable, affordable, and accessible for anyone and everyone who wants to go to do it. Right. And so I realized really early on that most of the programs teach people how to build a list and sell to it effectively, who are typically starting out. It's an early stage in a business. They sell for 4 to 5 figures from the get, and that's an exact mismatch for the audience. So I always like to make that clear. Now, the ways that I help people, there's a wild variety. And the first and easiest way to do it is follow me on social and hop on the newsletter. Because in the same way that we talk about all kinds of valuable stuff here, there's a lot of things waiting for each and every person, depending on the stage that they're at, that they'll find some value in and might be able to get some help from, right? On top of that, it escalates. And so if all of that is helpful, but you're looking for a little bit more access and one-to-one opportunity, we do have a membership. It's called Email Empire Insiders. And it's a way for other folks to be able to hop in, get access to anything and everything that I use, because everything I've used for my clients over the past 5 years that's made them millions, I've baked into templates for my own use. You get access to all that stuff. Trainings, we do guest expert sessions, all kinds of fun stuff. It's an affordable way relatively for people to be able to have more access. And it's an excuse for me to spend as much time as I possibly can with my customers, which is the ultimate goal for my business, right? And then escalating up off of that. Now, it's not officially launched yet. It'll be coming on in the new year, but there is a coaching program. We'll take folks from just starting out to where they are to helping them build all the foundations, go through strategies of optimizing LinkedIn profile and content strategy to attract subscribers, going ahead and putting together some of the most important emails you'll ever send, which are your welcome email and an automated sales sequence, teaching them how to make creating the content like we talked about for your emails or your newsletter regularly easy, because believe it or not, it only takes me an hour to 2 a week to have literally 5 to 7 days worth of emails and all my social content, right? And then showing them how to sell and launch to their list in something that I call the low-key launch, where it's literally a 10-day window where you've got opportunity. You don't send a ton of emails. It's not very complicated. And it gives you an opportunity to learn that and trust that your list will buy from you if you show them things that are interesting and helpful. And it's very easy to recreate for future uses. And so I'm super excited about that one. That's coming in the next year. But for now, folks can go and check out everything that I've got at emailempire.org. They can get on the list. I know we'll talk about it at the end, but I give away 100 copies of a course, and then it's affordable after that every month. But that's everything we're working on. I'm all over the place.
I love it. I think that having a membership makes it affordable, accessible, and it's a win-win, because you're getting direct contact with the people who have these email issues. And then, if you want to upsell them, and if they are like, hey, can you help me further on a more, then you can decide if you offer services like that or not. But you have always people who need that. And yes, I love this idea of the video course, the blueprint, and writing the emails 1 to 2 hours a week sounds really doable.
They don't have to be exclusive. So like when I write 1 to 2 hours worth of content, it's not just emails, it's closer to email format, but then it also becomes all of my social posts in a chopped up version that fits the platform better. And that consistency is so valuable for your audience. They need repetition. They want continuity. These are things that people in marketing preach all day long. And one of the best ways to do it is to think, I don't need to write emails for the week, and I don't need to write social posts for the week. I need to write content for my audience every single week. And then I need to tailor it to fit whatever platform I'm distributing it on. And I want to make sure that I'm on, maybe it's Instagram or YouTube or LinkedIn or Facebook for you, and email. Email is not a format, right? It's just another channel of distribution for however you want to communicate with your customers. No matter what, if they love podcasts, give them podcasts and deliver it in an email. If they love videos, give them videos. If they love social posts, give them social posts. But you're missing out if you don't use the best distribution channel that you have, which is your email list.
That's a good conclusion. I've really loved talking to you today, and I'm sure the audience is going to want to go to emailempire.org/blueprint to download that free video training and learn more about email. So thank you so much for coming, and everyone should connect with you. I'll leave all your contact info so they can really understand the power of email.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for having me, Krista. And thank you everybody for listening. This has been awesome. And I'm looking forward to connecting with all of y'all.